There is a specific kind of reading experience that just completely rewires your brain.
Oh, for sure. The kind that just lingers with you.
Right, exactly. Like, you are turning the pages, you're totally invested in a character's life, and then suddenly the author just drops the floor out from under you.
Yeah, and you're just left free falling.
You're left questioning literally everything you just read. And, well, that is exactly what happens in Chapter 10 of D.P. Kirk's 2017 dark sci-fi and fantasy novel, San Vitae, The Awakening.
It's such a brilliant book.
It really is. So today, we are bringing you a curated reader's guide, a deep dive into the sheer quality of this specific chapter, which is appropriately titled Broken Mind.
Very appropriately titled, yeah.
And we're also going to pitch you on why this absolute puzzle box of a book deserves a permanent spot on your reading list.
It is a narrative that really, demands your full attention. But to truly appreciate the devastation of Broken Mind, you need a solid grasp of the universe Kirk has built.
Yeah, the world building is intense.
It really is. We are looking at a post-cataclysmic world. The environment is just choked with ash and ruin, and society is strictly, and I mean ruthlessly, divided by biology.
Right, there's a huge class divide.
Exactly. On the bottom tier, you have Sans, which are just, regular powerless humans just trying to survive. Above them, you have the San.
And those are the ones with the abilities, right?
Yeah, they are beings who are biologically empowered by consuming blood, which the lore refers to as Vitae.
Right. And the political structure governing these two groups is just a complete powder keg.
Oh, a total mess.
You have factions constantly vying for control over the limited resources. Like, there are the Santerrie, who try to govern the sand through these incredibly strict ancient covenants.
Field rules, yeah.
And then you have the Humanis La Luna, which is this terrifyingly pure-blood human supremacist group. They basically view the San as abominations.
They're awful.
They really are. And looming over all of it is the New Covenant, this ultra-militaristic, highly advanced faction that operates with zero moral boundaries.
Right. And right in the middle of this societal meat grinder is our protagonist, Kurien.
Poor Kurien.
Yeah. He is a San conscript, fiercely loyal, and sworn by a blood oath to protect a Santerrie Covenness named Myasuchi.
But he's not just a regular soldier, is he?
No, not at all. Kurien is hiding a massive biological secret. He is what is known as a Sanite.
Which means his connection to Vitae is fundamentally mutated.
Exactly.
He possesses these unique, incredibly destructive abilities that just terrify the ruling classes. Like, they look at him and they don't see a soldier, they see an extinction-level threat.
They see a walking weapon.
Right, so we have this intense world building, this rich character dynamic of servitude between Kurien and Myasuchi, and then Chapter 10 arrives and just absolutely shatters the glass.
It really does.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
How does an author successfully execute a narrative rug pull of this magnitude without just making the reader throw the book across the room?
It's a huge risk.
It is, because Kurien's entire reality is completely dismantled in the span of, what, a few paragraphs?
Yeah, it is a delicate tightrope walk, creatively speaking. To understand why it works so well, we have to look at the narrative setup leading into this specific chapter.
The long con.
Exactly. For a very long stretch of the book, Kurien, and by extension, you, the reader, believes he's living a relatively peaceful, fulfilling life.
Right, in the sanctuary city.
Yeah, he believes he is residing in Rolanthi. He believes he is serving Myasuchi faithfully. He even believes that they have crossed the boundary of their station, built a family together, and are raising a young son named Han.
Such a nice setup.
It is. The text spends a lot of time heavily grounding you in the warm, domestic reality of this life.
Which is exactly why the moment the illusion breaks is so deeply unsettling.
Oh, it's terrifying.
It really is. Kurien is just standing in the market at a flower cart having a completely mundane interaction with a flower maiden, and he notices a tiny prick on her finger. Just a few drops of blood.
But it's not normal blood.
No, it doesn't coagulate. The blood literally morphs. It begins to violently expand, traveling up her arm like a living vine until it rips open a massive, fatal wound across her throat.
It's such a brutal image.
The maiden's eyes gloss over, she collapses, and the entire world around Kurien, the city, the sky, his family, just starts to dissolve into blackness.
The sensory details of the market just evaporate, leaving only Kurien and the unnatural blood of the flower maiden.
Yeah.
It is a brilliant, terrifying representation of psychological collapse.
It is so visceral. It is not like a computer simulation glitching. It feels more like You are standing in your living room, and suddenly you realize the walls of your house are actually just painted set pieces made of paper.
Yeah, and they're burning down.
Exactly, and they are actively catching fire around you. But I have to say, when I first read this, I was honestly furious. Yeah, from a storytelling perspective, it feels almost sadistic. Isn't it a massive risk for an author to build up a character's life, giving them a child, a romance, a home, just to yank the rug out? It feels like the author is just punishing the reader for investing emotionally.
Well, what's fascinating here is that Kirk isn't just tricking the reader for the sake of a cheap twist.
Okay, how so?
If it were just a shock value trick, you would be right to be angry. But he is fundamentally aligning your experience with Kurien's fractured psychology. By making you feel the betrayal, the anger, and the severe disorientation, he forces you directly inside Kurien's mind.
So it's not just a bad dream.
No, it isn't just a bad dream sequence. It is the harrowing reality of New Covenant torture methods. The text reveals that Kurien hasn't been living a happy life with Myasuchi and Han.
Oh man, this part hurts.
He has been strapped down to a steel interrogation table for 12 years.
12 years?
Yeah, 12 years of unceasing psychological and physical agony, designed specifically to test the absolute limits of his sanite biology.
That realization is just a gut punch. That happy life in Rowanth wasn't a lie, the author told the reader. It was a desperate defense mechanism that Kurien's own mind built just to survive the unendurable pain.
Exactly.
His brain literally created a sanctuary to hide in. And knowing that makes the transition into the physical horror of the sterile interrogation room so much worse. You aren't just waking up from a nap, you are being violently dragged out of a psychological bunker.
And the prose in this sequence is where Kirk's writing truly shines. As a piece of dark sci-fi horror, the quality of Chapter 10 is outstanding because of how it weaponizes sensory dissonance.
Right, the contrast is crazy.
You go from the soft, colorful, fragrant illusion of a flower cart straight into the harsh, blinding clinical reality of a torture chamber. Kurien wakes up strapped down under buzzing fluorescent lights in a sterile gray stone room.
The sensory shock is immediate.
It is, and the language Kirk uses becomes very sharp and metallic.
The details of his physical state are so jarring. Like, he looks down and realizes his naked body is covered in deep, old lacerations. And his wrists, this is so gross, literally have cylindrical holes bored straight through them, pinning him to the table.
It's horrific.
And standing over him is this sadistic, balding, pure-blood humanist interrogator who is shining a blinding light directly into Kurien's retinas.
Yeah, just absolute sensory overload.
Off in the background, there is a sand attendant standing next to a medical cart full of bubbling, Vitae-rich blood. And the interrogator doesn't just torture him physically, he goes straight for the psychological jugular.
He really does.
He mocks Kurien's devotion. He laughs at him and claims that Myasuchi, the woman his mind just built an entire fake life around to protect, is actually the one who sold him to the New Covenant and left him there to bleed.
It is psychological warfare compounding physical torture.
It's just evil.
The interrogator is deliberately trying to shatter the foundational pillar of Kurien's sanity, which is his loyalty.
So, how does a protagonist fight back when they are physically restrained and mentally broken? Because I kept waiting for a classic action movie breakout, but his body is destroyed.
Right, he can't even move.
So when he finally strikes back, I was shocked to realize it wasn't even a conscious choice on his part. It was a biological reflex.
Exactly. This is where we witness the terrifying reality of what a sanite actually is, and the mechanics of this magic system are fascinating.
The osmosis thing?
Yes, Kurien's retaliation is involuntary, driven by pure cellular hunger and feral rage. Because he's a sanite, his body possesses this incredible biological osmosis.
He doesn't even have to drink the blood.
Right. He doesn't need to physically drink Vitae to absorb its power. He can actively draw upon ambient Vitae from the environment, almost like a magnetic pull on the iron and energy in the blood around him. The bubbling blood on the attendant's cart physically reacts to the spike in his adrenaline and rage.
Right, he literally magnetizes it. He manages to pull that Vitae through the air and form a blackened, hyper-condensed, solid spike of sanguineous Vitae straight out of his forearm.
And the mechanism here is crucial. It isn't just magic for the sake of magic. It is an evolutionary survival trait.
It's an adaptation.
Exactly. The sanite biology recognizes that the host is in fatal peril, so it weaponizes the only resource available in the room.
And he launches that spike with devastating force. I mean, the text describes this black projectile surging right through the balding interrogator's head, completely splattering his gray brain matter against the wall behind him.
It's explosive.
Shockingly violent. The sand attendant is so terrified by what he just witnessed that he manifests a heavy stone shield and goes sprinting down the hallway, literally clacking against the walls in a blind panic.
Just scrambling to get away.
When I read that, it felt incredibly cathartic. You get this massive rush of adrenaline and think, yes, he is breaking out. He just took down his torturer.
Which brings us to the absolute brilliance of the chapter's pacing. Kirk gives you that momentary high of the action hero escape. He lets you feel the triumph and then immediately subverts your expectations.
Oh man, does he ever.
Plunging the narrative straight back down into psychological horror.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because that triumph is completely erased in an instant. Kurien's vision blurs, and he realizes he hasn't escaped the table at all.
And he's still trapped.
He is still paralyzed. He is completely impaled in the chest by a large blade. He isn't even breathing properly. Instead of blood, he is bleeding a viscous black liquid, and he can't even force his lungs to gasp for air.
It's so suffocating.
That explosive, incredibly satisfying retaliation we just talked about. It seems it was just another layer of his fragmented consciousness trying to process the trauma. Or, well, maybe it was a glimpse of his body's dark potential while his conscious mind remained entirely trapped.
It is a terrifying realization. You are forced to question what is real and what is a trauma response.
Yeah.
And to make the reality of his situation even worse, in this paralyzed, bleeding state, he notices a mirrored glass observation window set into the stone wall.
The watch.
Right. He hears a woman's voice coming through a speaker, speaking in this detached, entirely clinical tone. She is casually observing his suffering, taking notes as if he were a petri dish.
Just a science experiment to them.
Yes. She specifically mentions his shifting persona and marvels at the very sanite ability we just discussed. His body's desperate attempt to seek vitae from the environment on its own. And then, with chilling apathy, she casually tells the attendant to leave him on the table for his final tests.
Final tests. After 12 years of being cut open, just the absolute casual cruelty of that is chilling. It is like he is nothing more than a lab rat to them.
It's completely dehumanizing.
And it brings me to an analogy that helps me wrap my head around what is actually happening to his psyche. It is exactly like a deep-sea diver experiencing nitrogen narcosis.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Just like how extreme physical pressure deep underwater forces nitrogen to dissolve into a diver's bloodstream, literally toxifying their brain, causing extreme hallucinations, and stripping away their sense of self, the extreme psychological pressure of the vault is toxifying Kurien's mind.
The environment changes his brain chemistry.
Exactly. The sheer pressure of the torture forces his brain to adapt to an environment that a human psyche simply cannot survive in.
That is a perfect way to look at the mechanics of his mental state. This raises an important question about the fundamental nature of survival. How does a mind endure the unendurable without completely self-destructing?
Right. Something has to give.
This chapter, Broken Mind, isn't just a poetic title. It is a literal description of an origin point. The sustained trauma physically forces Kurien's psyche to split into compartments. This is the exact moment his demon persona is fully realized.
The birth of the monster.
Exactly. It is a cold, indifferent, malice-fueled version of himself that takes the wheel. The human Kurien, the one who loves Myasuchi and dreams of a child, cannot handle the pain of the blade in his chest.
He'd just die from the shock.
So the demon steps in to absorb the agony, acting as a psychological shield, allowing the core of who Kurien is to retreat back into those delusions just to stay alive.
It is compartmentalization taken to its absolute most terrifying extreme. The monster isn't an invader, it is a bodyguard.
A very dangerous bodyguard.
Which naturally brings us to the broader context of the book. For a listener who is intrigued by this incredibly intense, multi-layered psychological sequence, why does this specific chapter make San Vitae, The Awakening, a must-read? Like, where does the story actually go from here?
Well, from a reader's guide perspective, Chapter 10 is the absolute fulcrum of the entire story. Everything hinges on this single moment of fracture.
The turning point.
Yes. Before Broken Mind, the book operates largely as a dark political fantasy about a loyal servant navigating complicated factional politics for his Covenness. But after this chapter, the narrative radically shifts genres.
Absolutely.
It transforms into the story of a broken, incredibly dangerous living weapon that has just been unleashed into a ruined post-apocalyptic world.
And the world outside that vault is absolutely wild. Once Kurien eventually escapes the facility and gets into the post-apocalyptic ruins of the wastes, the scope of the book explodes.
It gets so expansive.
Kirk introduces all these incredible sci-fi elements. You have these epic large-scale battles involving D-Vitae energy weapons, which are so cool, by the way.
Oh, I love the DVT tech.
Right. Instead of using Vitae to empower, these weapons use a synthetic anti-blood that literally strips the kinetic energy out of a sanite, neutralizing their abilities. And he is fighting against anarchs, which are these lawless, factionless survivalists roaming the ash storms.
Plus the mutants.
Not to mention the monstrous anti-sen mutants, whose biology has been completely warped and corrupted by consuming toxic irradiated vitae.
The world building expands significantly, offering this sprawling cinematic landscape, but the genius of the book is that it remains deeply grounded in Kurien's psychological struggle.
It never loses that intimate focus.
It's exactly. The core of the second half of the book revolves around his partnership with another survivor he meets in the ruins, a heavily tattooed woman named Sharina.
Their dynamic is so complex. Sharina herself is a survivor of unimaginable torture, and their bond is forged in that shared trauma.
It's a very intense relationship.
Well, what makes it so gripping is that they share this mysterious, overlapping history. They actually experience shared memories involving past characters from the lore, like Lotus and Kiki.
Which just adds another layer to the mystery.
You are constantly trying to piece together how their timelines intersect. The lore just gets deeper and deeper, and you realize everything is connected. So if you had to pitch this book to a reader who's listening right now and is still on the fence, what is the ultimate hook?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the ultimate hook is this: San Vitae. The Awakening is not just a book about bloody vampire battles or post-apocalyptic survival.
Right, it's smarter than that.
It is an intricate, masterfully constructed puzzle box about identity and memory. It explores the terrifying lengths the mind will go to in order to protect the heart. Kurien's external struggle against the New Covenant, the Anarchs, and the mutants is thrilling, but his internal struggle is the true narrative engine.
He is fighting a desperate, losing battle for the steering wheel of his own body.
Exactly.
He has to keep this dark, demonic persona, the very thing that kept him alive in the vault, from taking over completely and hurting the people he genuinely loves, like Sharina and his former friend Tippin.
The demon is a constant threat.
The demon views Kurien's compassion as a fatal weakness, while Kurien views the demon's malice as a corruption of his soul. The tension never lets up because the monster isn't just outside the walls, it is inside his own mind.
It forces you to reevaluate everything you thought you knew about the story up to that point, and it leaves you with a lingering philosophical dilemma about the nature of survival.
Yeah, it really makes you think.
We often view demons or dark alter egos in literature as the ultimate evil, right? Something external that must be vanquished to restore purity. But when you look closely at Kurien's 12 years in the New Covenant vault, you realize a haunting truth.
What's that?
His demon wasn't born out of a desire for power or inherent evil. He was born purely out of his profound love for Myasuchi.
Wow.
It was the only psychological construct capable of surviving the physical pain of her supposed betrayal.
So what does this all mean? It means that Broken Mind is an absolute masterclass in psychological horror. It uses the structure of a collapsing reality to introduce us to the sheer clinical terror of the New Covenant, while simultaneously showing us the awe-inspiring, terrifying mechanics of a Sanite's power.
It completely flips the narrative.
It is a chapter that completely changes the trajectory of the book and redefines who the protagonist is.
It does. And if we look beyond Kurien's personal tragedy, analyzing the mechanics of his destructive power leaves us with an incredibly uncomfortable thought to mull over.
Oh, I'm ready. Lay it on me.
Throughout the book, we naturally view the New Covenant as the ultimate sadistic villains for strapping a man to a table for 12 years. But consider the sheer, unchecked power we just witnessed. Kurien can involuntarily magnetize blood, form weapons out of thin air, and obliterate people just by experiencing a spike in adrenaline.
He is incredibly dangerous.
He is quite literally a walking apocalypse.
That is a really unsettling point.
It asks a terrible question. What if the New Covenant's horrific methods aren't just born of malice?
Wait, you mean like they were justified?
Well, if you are a faction tasked with ensuring the survival of humanity in a ruined world, and you discover a being capable of city-leveling destruction triggered by mere emotion, is a sterile vault, and 12 years of paralyzing torture simply a mathematically necessary containment protocol.
Oh, that is dark.
It forces you to wonder if the real horror of the universe isn't just the torture itself, but the possibility that the torture might be objectively justified to keep the rest of the world safe from the monster Kurien could become.
Wow. That is an incredibly heavy, fascinating thought to leave on. The line between a sadistic villain and a necessary warden is razor thin when you are dealing with extinction-level magic.
Very thin.
If you are intrigued by that kind of deep psychological exploration wrapped in intense, meticulously crafted, dark sci-fi action, you absolutely need to track down a copy of San Vitae, The Awakening by D.P. Kirk, and experience the madness and mystery for yourself. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We will catch you on the next one.